Every day was just like trying to survive. I learned so much about the power of my mind, and I learned the difference between choices and options. At the end of those 93 days, what was taking me down was my body. But we are incredible. Human beings are just incredibly resilient and strong when we have to tap in and draw from nothing. And so I did think I was going to make it if it were up to me.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course, with insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today.
Joe DeSena here, CEO and founder of Spartan and host of the Hard Way podcast. I've got a new friend of mine, Jessica Buchanan, on. She was in captivity in terrible conditions back in 2011 to 2012, 93 days, survived. She's a complete badass. And now she runs around teaching all of us wimps that complain about the silliest things, how to level up our life and get through tough times. Welcome aboard, Jessica.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction.
Somalia, 93 days. Do you think you were going to make it?
Yeah, I did. Actually, I mean, if it were up to me, I think I learned so much about the power of my mind, and I learned the difference between choices and options. And, at the end of those 93 days, what was taking me down was my body. We are incredible. Human beings are just incredibly resilient and strong when we have to tap in and draw from nothing. And so I did think I was going to make it if it were up to me.
Well, how did you grow up in a really tough, military family that prepared you for this, or?
No, I mean, I grew up in church. So, on one hand, it was tough, but I have always been, I'm a teacher by profession. I would say I lean into the softer side of my skill set. Creative, intuitive. I remember the first several weeks of captivity, I just had this phrase running through my mind, and it was, I am not this girl. I was working for a demining organization. Again, in the education space. So I'm not going around clearing out areas from landmines, but I was educating on the topic. So on those softer skill sets, but I was working with all these ex-military guys and all of these really strong, as I perceived it, badass women who I kept thinking they should be here, not me. They would know what to do, not me. They could use this as street cred, not me. I don't need this. I am not that girl. And I don't know how many days into the whole ordeal, I remember just waking up one morning. I had spent, all these nights sleeping on the ground on a mat out in the middle of the desert. And I looked around and I realized, what, actually, I am that girl. Actually, I am doing this. My co-captive, a Danish gentleman named Paul, who was taken with me, I remember him coming over to me and telling him kind of this realization. And I said, and I won't say exactly what I said, but I was like, I'm a badass. And he was like, well, yeah. Heck yeah, you are. It had taken me that long to realize oh, actually, I might have what it takes to survive this. And now, because hindsight is such a lovely gift to have, I can see that that's kind of the point of these hard things we go through, is for us to use it as a baseline.
Yeah, what's funny is life is going to throw real curveballs at you. Not everybody's going to get kidnapped, but we are going to have to face some serious challenges in life. And I've been arguing for 25 years with this business that we've got to manufacture a little adversity in our life. We obviously can't have everybody kidnapped like you are, right? But we can sprinkle in some burpees, some cold showers, maybe a little long walk from the car to the grocery store, whatever it may be, to make us uncomfortable enough so that we could flex that muscle maybe and build that muscle, those calluses.
I think from the perspective of parenting, I have 2 tweens right now, and I keep reminding myself that I have to let things be hard for them. right? Because that's the only way they're going to build resilience. I can't go and fix everything and pick up after them and clean up after them and, run their instrument over to school when those are just little examples. But if we're not manufacturing those hard things and we're not flexing that muscle and building that strength, then what do we have to access when the real hard stuff hits us that we can't control?
How old are the kids?
12 and 10.
I want them. We have a death camp, we call it, every summer on our farm in Vermont, where about 100 kids from around the world come out, and we create a bunch of manufactured adversity for them. They're carrying rocks up the mountain. They're in cold water. If you get a chance, Google Camp Spartan, but I'd love to take the kids there. And it's amazing what happens. What happens is what happened to you throughout those 93 days is the kids become harder to kill. They just become more confident. They come home, they're proud of themselves, and they realize that, you know what, I got to stop complaining about silly stuff.
I mean, it's a real perspective shift and the confidence, right? Like, I was talking to somebody about that last night. Like, I have such faith. I'm a spiritual person. I'm a person of faith. So I have such faith in the universe and God that I'm supported and I'm taken care of. But I also have a lot of faith in myself now that I didn't have. And again, like hindsight, that lovely gift, I think that's the whole point.
Tell us about those 93 days, how it went down.
Well, interestingly enough, I knew something was off as the story usually unfolds. I actually tried to cancel this training a couple of weeks before it was supposed to take place. I'd canceled it twice before. I called Paul, my colleague, and said, I don't feel good about this. I was up in Hargeisa in the northern part of Somalia, and he was running our counterpart program down south where it was valid. It was less safe. And he basically was like, look, if you don't get down here and do your job, then I'm going to call your boss and report you. And I love my job. And, he was kind of like, this is what you've signed up for. If you can't do it, then, we'll find somebody else who can. And, I got off the phone. I just didn't feel good about it. But at the same time, I was scared because I wanted to keep my job. And so, I thought, I grew up in the middle of a cornfield in Ohio. Like, I'm a teacher. Like, what's the worst that can happen? It's all going to be fine. And the luxury of youth, I think, in naivety. And so I get on a UN plane. I go down to Galkayo, to the southern part. Training's 3 days, 2 days. First 2 days we do in the same compound where we're staying. So that's not what I was worried about. What I was worried about is moving to the southern part of the city because I knew I was like the most vulnerable while we were in transit. We get over to the office, we do our training, everything's fine, and I've just got this immense feeling of relief, right? Like I'm home free. I just need to get in this convoy of land cruisers, get across the green line, get back over to the compound. I'm leaving early the next morning. We get in those convoy of vehicles. We've got a driver I don't recognize. And I remember thinking that's odd, but again, it's not my project. So there are a lot of things that were unfamiliar to me. We're driving through the city 10, 15 minutes, and all of a sudden a car comes up on the right side of us and splashes mud up all over the windows and the windshield. And I remember looking up from my phone. I was trying to send a last minute email, and I said to the entire car, like, what a jerk, who drives like that? And then somebody hits the car hood with the butt of an AK-47. Then it sounds like we're being surrounded by really angry men. They're screaming in Somali. I don't speak Somali, so I don't really know what they're saying. And then the doors open. There's a man dressed in a police uniform. He is armed. He gets into the vehicle, puts the gun at my head, and starts screaming at the driver to drive. And we are just like just flying through the village where, I thought the car was going to flip over at one point. We're screaming, begging the driver to slow down. And basically we're driven out into the desert, deep, deep, deep into the desert, like no civilization for hours. We changed vehicles several times. They changed personnel. At one point, there was a small child. I had like a 9-year-old child behind me in the vehicle wearing chains of ammunition. He had an AK-47. Later learned his name was Abdullahi, and he was 12. He was just small for his age, and he was learning the family business of kidnapping and ransom. And then they drove us further and forced us out of vehicles, and then marched to what was I believed to be our execution. They had us get down on our knees and then told us to sleep. And interestingly enough, like how our bodies adapt when we're in fight or flight, right? I just passed out. And I woke up a few hours later. The sun had come up by then. And the only way I can describe it is just waking up in hell. I'm the only woman. I'm surrounded by dozens of men. Everybody's heavily armed. I don't understand what they're saying. I don't understand what they want. I don't know if they're going to kill me or if they want money. I don't know if I'm going to be assaulted. And it was just day after, like day in and day out of mental torture, physical abuse, deprivation. We were kept outside the entire time. They never took us to like a house or any kind of structure. So we would sit under trees or lay under bushes for 12 hours during the day and then sleep out in the open at night. And they were always like working in shifts, I guess, so we'd have, a particular group sitting with us or, keeping watch over us for 5 days at a time. And then a new group would come in and they switched out leaders several times. Often they would refer to themselves as pirates or militia. I think there was a lot of mental illness present, a lot of trauma, as you can imagine, and then substance abuse. They chewed this leaf called khat, which would make them really high. It's an amphetamine, and paranoid. And I was familiar with that because I'd been in East Africa working for a very long time. So that's a very cultural thing. But it was every day was just like trying to survive. Yeah. And I mean, on one hand, that's a really simple job to have. But on the other hand, it's the most important job I think I've ever had in my life.
It is a simple but important job. How many days in were you when you said to your partner, the other captive, I'm pretty tough. Like, I'm going to get through this?
I think it was probably a month in. I realized very quickly that I had to take things in increments. I couldn't look at this at like the totality of it because there was no end in sight, right? Like I believe Amnesty International once defined the torture as being detained with no release date. And that to me is absolute mental torture because, if you have a sentence of 20 years, well, that's a really long time, but you can count down the days, you can divide, you can compartmentalize, right? You can segment that out. But when you don't know how long and when or if there's going to be an end, that it is a whole different mindset, I think, that you have to master. For me, I just, when I felt so overwhelmed that I was just gonna like collapse into panic, I would just tell myself, okay, like all you have to get through is like the next 30 seconds and just breathe. All you have to get through is the next minute or, whatever. And so when I got to the point where I was like, you know what, I can do this for another 30 days. I can do this for another 30 days. I've got another 30 days in me, and I would walk like when, there were certain camps we would stand and they would start to relax a little bit. And so they would let us walk the perimeter of the camp. And I remember one walk I took specifically in the morning and I was feeling mentally strong and my body was fairly healthy. And I thought, yeah, you know what? I can do this. I can do this. If I can do this for another 30 days, like I can do anything. So I very much took this on. Now I've never done a Spartan, but I very much took this on, I think, as an athlete would, right? Like I think a lot of these are universal mindset mechanisms that we use to get through things that are very physically and mentally tough. And we have to take them in chunks because the entire thing is just too overwhelming.
Yeah. How do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. And you had no books to read. You had no music to listen to, like hot baking sun, barely enough water, food. Do you lose a lot of weight during the whole thing? You get pretty amazing.
40 pounds in 93 days. I'm almost 6 feet tall. Yeah, it definitely took a toll.
And how'd you get out finally?
Well, I had some really good friends and some really good places, I guess. Unbeknownst to me, I had no idea. I don't know what it's like to be in a coma, but I can imagine that being a hostage feels a little bit like that because you just have no idea what's happening in the outside world. I didn't know that the FBI got involved in a situation like this when there's a crime committed against an American citizen. I figured I was just at the mercy of my organization. I did know that they had kidnapping and ransom insurance, so that brought me a little bit of peace of mind. But my captor started the ransom demand at $45 million. And our organization countered at 20,000. And so I thought, wow, okay, I'm no mathematician, but it's going to take a real long time to meet in the middle here. If these are the figures that we're starting out with, like I am in this for the long haul. What really set the wheels in motion, again, I had no idea. We had 6 proof of life calls. The last one was on January 16th, 2012. And I had contracted a urinary tract infection that was moving into a kidney infection just due to the lack of hygienic conditions we were living in. And I listed off the symptoms to our family communicators, what they called them on the other end of the line. I basically said, I mean, I was getting pretty desperate. Like, I'm in a lot of pain here. And I know I've had a kidney infection before. I was hospitalized for a week. Like, if you don't get me out of here, I think I'm going to die in the next couple of weeks because I'm going to get sepsis. And, this is going to be on you guys because you didn't get me out of here in time. And so, you get off the phone and you get driven back to camp and you have no idea what's going to happen next. And what I didn't know was that impending loss of life can set the wheels in motion for a military intervention. And so on January 24th, so about 9 days later, I, was just kind of going about my business. I was really, really sick. I was in a lot of pain, but I had like pulled my mat out into the middle of the field where I was going to sleep that night. And I did fall asleep for a couple of hours and I woke up sick, needing to be sick. And there were 9 guys on the ground that night. And they were all passed out, which was really strange because, there was always one keeping watch. But they were just, stone cold out. And so I said the word toilet, which is how I asked to be excused from my mat. And I didn't want to leave my mat without permission because that never ended well. And no one woke up. So I picked up a small pen light that I had been given and I started flashing it because I wanted them to know if somebody did wake up that I was still here. And flashing it, go do what I need to do, come back, wrap myself up in my blanket. And about 30 seconds later, the pirate on my left, I can tell he's like up. He's standing up and I can't see his face because it's gotten really dark. There's no moon, there's no stars. And but I can tell he's terrified and he's whisper screaming at all the other guys to wake up in Somali. And then the night just erupts into automatic gunfire. And I'm thinking, oh my God. Like my mind is like, I'm not going to make it through this. Like if this is another group, which was always a threat, maybe it's Al-Shabaab, an Islamic terrorist extremist group, like I'm dead. And I'm just trying to like basically make myself as small as possible and just bury myself under my blanket. Maybe no one will notice that I'm there. And, these guys are just dropping all around me. And somebody grabs my ankles and my shoulders and starts pulling the blanket away from my face, and I'm trying to fight back. And then this young American man pulling the blanket away from me, and he knows my name, and he just says, Jessica, we're the American military. You're safe now. We're going to take you home. I just remember sitting up and looking around, and I can't really see anything because everything's just really, really dark. But all I can say over and over again is, you're American? Wait a second, you're American. I don't understand. Like, I can't make my brain connect how anybody would find me. And he says, yeah, we've been watching you for a very long time and we know how sick you've been. And it would take a little bit longer. It would take a couple of hours, but we were put on a helo and taken to Djibouti to a military base for medical attention. And then I guess, as you would say, the rest is history.
And I assume the other captive friend was also taken out.
He was rescued as well. I do believe. He said that his best his luck was that he got taken with an American because Denmark was not coming for us. So, so that worked out well for him too.
That's awesome. You stay in touch with him?
We do not. We had some differences of opinion in terms of how this all went down, and so we could not meet in the middle.
Well, you're alive. He's alive.
That's what matters.
And the bad guys aren't. So you come back. So this is 13 years ago. What have you been doing since?
It's been busy. I've been doing a lot of healing because trauma takes time to heal from. I would call this space of my life surviving survival. I think a lot of people don't understand that once the big, huge traumatic event is over, then there's a whole second part of survival that takes place. That's really what I'm passionate about talking about. But I've had 2 kids, and I've been speaking. I've been sharing about my experience. My husband and I co-authored a book called Impossible Odds about the kidnapping and his fight to bring me home, mainly to say thank you to the thousands of people who were involved in bringing me back. Doing just really, I'm very passionate about helping people find purpose after the hard stuff, because I think that latching on to something is what is going to heal us and bring us to wholeness after our pain.
There's no doubt about it. I've been through some tough times, not being kidnapped for 93 days, not nearly as tough as you. But I do find that if you've got a purpose, if you've got a reason, you're more likely to make it through the valley of death. Without that, it'd be easy to tap out and give up.
100%. And I just feel so strongly about that. And I want people to understand that your pain, it won't be wasted.
How do people find you?
Well, I probably spend way too much time on Instagram. So Jessica C. Buchanan, or you can reach out to me, info@jessbuchanan, or look me up on my website, jessbuchanan.com.
And get the book.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, if you're out there, you're listening, you're watching, make sure you find purpose in your life. Make sure you practice hard. And then I guess the other message I heard from you is you're a lot tougher than you think you are. We tend to put on these layers of softness, and you just got to peel back the onion and find the rock underneath, because it exists there for all of us. Otherwise, to your point, our species would not have survived as long as it has.
Yeah, amen to that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. My pleasure.